Um, Commission members have gotten minutes from the previous meeting, and I would open the floor to questions or corrections of the minutes. If we don't hear none in a reasonable length of time, we'll declare them to be approved, but wanted to give that opportunity. Anybody want to raise any matter connected with those minutes? This would be the October 29 meeting. If not, we'll declare them approved as printed. Thank you, Jan. And we'll also then, along with that, ask Matt to give us whatever report is available now, follow up to our decision, our recommendation on Elaine Lowry's lot split. What materialized after our meeting on that matter?
Yeah, the lot split was completed, so everything has been filed on that, and that is completed and done. So we are good to go on that.
Okay. Thank you for the information. It's good to know. Next, we'll take a look at the agenda for tonight's meeting. And is there anything else that anybody would like to put on the agenda? Like I said, last meeting, I intend to provide one more opportunity before we close the meeting tonight. If anything comes to mind in the process, certainly we'll give another opportunity to cover that. If you know something now, we can pencil it in too.
Ken, I don't have anything that is other than what we're doing, but one thing we did not have on the agenda was Matt's bringing back to the board the outcome of the Elaine Lowry approval last week. I don't know whether that needs to be on there or not, but it wasn't. My
intention is to consider that to be a part of taking care of the minutes from the previous meeting, but if there's a better way to do it, certainly I'm open to that. That's why I included it after we approved the minutes tonight. That's why I asked him for that report. But if there's a better way to do it, certainly that's fine.
I'm fine with that if it doesn't need to be on there.
Well, my intention is certainly every time we have a meeting to ask him to report back from whatever decision we would have made at the previous meeting. So we'll continue to do it on that basis unless some other decision is made. Then we come to case ZCU 2020-14 conditional use permit. You've gotten a copy of the application for that. The applicants are with us this evening. Please make whatever comments, whatever augmented information you feel like we would need to start off the discussion.
Thank you for the opportunity. And my name is Tracy Halliday, as you can see on the application, and this is my wife, Dara. And we are looking at an opportunity to kind of fence in some property that's not unfenced at the present time.
It is unfenced.
That's unfenced at the present time. Was fenced previously some years ago, but it's all decrepit and fallen down. Since the lot's been split from when the Dalkeys had the larger piece with the tillable land and the other piece, this 8-point-something acres is needing to be fenced. We've got things being deposited, dropped off, that's not ours, and things that don't need to be left here and being left. So trying to stop some of that, and then trying to figure out a way to control or manage some of the grasslands here, being that it grows profusely. And so we've been looking at some kind of cows or goats or something once we fence it in to try to help, or maybe a horse to try to help control some of that.
The horse would be for riding.
Some of the grass.
Okay, thank you. What questions might commission members have to direct to the applicants as the next step in the process?
What type of fencing are they looking at?
At this point, we looked at even a cedar 3-rung, but probably just going to end up with the cheaper route since we're going to need to pay for a permit for fencing 8 and some odd acres. We'll be doing probably more of the barbed wire situation. Just a normal barbed wire with posts and that kind of thing. And put a gate in, a couple of gates.
So I have a question. You're planning on fencing all around the property line?
That's the intended goal, yes.
Okay, so that's where, to the members of the commission, that's where the permission from the commission would come into play, because there's no fence allowed in the required front yard, which would be a 25-foot setback from the east property line, would be the required front yard. So they would need permission, would need to be included in their conditional use permit conditions, that the fence would be allowed in the front yard.
Thank you for that explanation. That was a question that was going through my mind about why a fence needs to be a part of the conditional use permit, but that explained it right there.
Right. I was wondering if that wouldn't be a question. The other part of this is, the code prohibits livestock or any member of the horse family, swine family, sheep family, goat family, or any species of cattle from being within the city limits. And so that's the other reason why they're requesting the conditional use permit, is because they're wanting to have those kinds of animals within the city limits.
Okay, other questions from commission members, first of all, and then we'll open it up to anybody as soon as commission members have had ample opportunity to ask questions.
What is their desire as far as animals?
We're looking at the cow, the horse, and either trying to decide between cow or goat. I don't know which one's going to be better to eat up the underbrush that we have out here.
Talking a single cow, a single goat? Multiple?
No, it would be, you would need 4, 5, 6 on the cow side, and then, 10, 12 on the goat side.
The application says goats plural, cows plural, horse singular.
So would the,
Matt, I had sent you an email late today. I don't know if you saw it, requesting that you pull the minutes from when we allowed we recommended, and the city council allowed the elementary school to do some animals. Did you get that, or did you have a chance to do that?
I have not had a chance to pull those minutes. Jan may be able to shed some light on that. So I don't have that information in front of me, unfortunately. But I do know that was a similar situation. They wanted turkeys, or I guess turkeys they have there. But it was a pretty small area. But I would defer to Jan on that if she has anything. But I'm not certain that we had enough time.
Actually, I think I can address it. I went ahead. I anticipated this question, so I went ahead and pulled. I don't have the minutes from the meeting, but I pulled my file from the meeting. And what we put into place is the city enacted a policy, a school farm application policy. And now it's specific to a school farm, but there are some, I can read you some of the policy highlights. It talks about some of the things are going to be in the Halladeer's favor, and some are going to be against them. So I just want you to, take into account that there's several items here. One is the farm application cannot be combined with land use that also includes a residential structure. This policy recognizes the farm application as a conditional use to the city's Hillsboro residential zoning district. Residential occupation and the farm application are not permitted. So, and then it also requires a site plan, which they provided a survey. But also, number 4 is non-commercial use. Raising animals in the farm application shall be for a non-commercial purpose. Animals raised can be sold or otherwise disposed of and can be replaced by other animals to facilitate the educational purpose for which they are on the property. Number 5 is lot size. The minimum lot size for this application shall be 300 by 300 feet. Their lot is much larger than that. Number 6, minimum distance. The minimum distance to any other structure that is not on the applicant's property shall be 100 feet, measured from the nearest corner of the farm structure, whether it is a fence or a building, that's in parentheses, to the nearest corner of the off-site residential structure. Number 7, animal containment. All animals, livestock, and fowl shall be contained in a particular area of the property and not allowed to run free except within the boundaries of the farm application. Structures used to house the animals shall be sufficiently strong enough to securely keep the animals from escape. Number 7, accessory buildings. Any building accessory to the farm application shall be within the boundaries of the fenced or contained area. Number 9, fencing. Electrified fencing of any type is not permitted. Number 10, nuisances. Applicant shall provide a waste management plan. Animal wastes and other wastes from the farm application are not suitable for the City of Hillsboro's solid waste collection and will not be permitted. Composting of waste is permissible if odors are managed. Applicant shall use best practices to limit other nuisances like flies, rodents, and similar annoyances that would affect the residential neighborhood. And there's an end of school clause and a sunset clause. That's number 12. Conditional use permits will allow maintaining the appropriate use until such time that the farm application is no longer being used. Moving animals, livestock, and fowl each summer and returning each fall shall not affect the effectiveness of the conditional use permit. Should the farm application not occur in any particular year, the conditional use permit will expire at the end of the next school session following the last use. So that's the policy for the school farm. And obviously there were some things there that speak against the how there's like the residential property. This is a residential property, but I would point out that it's on the outskirts of town, and they only have 2 neighbors. And are any of the neighbors represented in the public? I'm sorry, maybe we haven't opened it up for public comment yet. But so that was one. And I don't know, are you planning on selling cows, or is this going to be a ranch operation? Because that was one of the other things for non-commercial use. And then what is important is the waste management. You know, how's that going to be? I think we should.
So as far as when you describe waste management, we're not putting it down the sewer, if that's what you're asking.
Or putting it out for the trash.
Oh, no.
Yeah, putting it out for the trash, I think, is what this is mostly.
We would compost.
Yeah, and I
If
think
they're
that's
free range,
acceptable.
we're just going to be free range. So that's the thing on the cows, is pretty much free range.
Sure.
As far as raising, you know, if you had a couple of the yearlings and they grow up and you've got too many, then you're going to need to sell some off at some point. But that's not an operational thing, of more occasional versus let's push out X amount of herd and turn them over and grow them up. That's not the plan.
Right, we don't want a feedlot.
No. No desire to run a feedlot. No time to run a feedlot.
Yeah. So Gary, does that help with your question that you have? That we're going to also.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Should I state real quickly, 2 of our sides of the property are farmland. The third side is the old railroad right away. And so again, the only one that's residential really with houses along it is that front line on North Elm Street.
And I did a quick measurement, and the Anderson house is right about at 100 feet from your property. So it'd just be the other house that's on Elm Street there.
One other thing, if I could get it clarified, looking at a map and the city boundaries that I can see online, it looks like this property is internal to the city, not right on the edge of the city limits.
I think that's true. I think let me see if I can pull it up.
However, the property that is between theirs and the city limit
It's farmland.
is agricultural,
Right.
right?
That's right.
Which may affect our consideration. The thought that occurred to me a little bit ago, if you can't have a commercial farm and can't sell those animals when they get bigger, that there's only one other thing to do. You've got to eat them then.
No question. No
We
question.
could do that.
The clause that we had for the school for fencing that will contain it, from experience, if you go with goats, barbed wire is not going to hold them.
Correct. You'd have to be
So
the
you'll have to
narrow wire.
rethink your fencing idea if you think about goats. So
Yeah, they
Goats
say,
would do a lot better of taking care of brush than cattle, which,
uh,
for whatever that's worth.
Thank you.
my experience with them is if we ran them down a tree line and kind of contained them with temporary fencing, they would get out all the weeds. And the strange thing was the weeds didn't come back after you moved the goats back out.
Hmm.
So I'm not a scientist. I can't explain it, but it was like,
you.
well, hey,
Other questions from the commission? Then if not, we'll soon open it up to any other questions from anybody else or comment. Okay, I think we'll move on to that phase then. Anybody else that's with us tonight certainly can feel free to make comments, ask questions. You're here because you have some interest in the matter being discussed, so feel free.
I'll go ahead and speak. Can you guys hear me okay? Or am I echoey?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi. I assume this is the public hearing part of the matter, so typically you state your name and address for the record and all that stuff. So my name is Adriana Mader. I am at 32604 West 171st Court in Gardner. I am one of the property owners that borders the area. That was one of my homes growing up as a child. So I just had some questions and clarification to ask. I've been in conversation with Matt, so thank you, Matt, for what you could provide. I know that the application came in prior to you coming on board, and there was just, you did what you could with what you had, so thank you for sending that. Did I catch one of the things, Ben Stakiti, that you said reading back through the ordinance? Because I pulled up the ordinances that were wrote for the farming operation that is housed over at the elementary school, put into place back in 2014. Did you state that a site plan needed to be put together as part of the applicant's package? Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct. And that was, the policy was written, specific for the school application. And so I think they wanted to make sure that according to the site plan that the area would be safe, for kids and stuff. Also, there are setback requirements, and there was going to be a small structure put up, and I think that was
Okay.
part of it too. But
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
that policy, there was a site plan requirement.
Okay, just checking on that, because that was some of the questions I had, is to understanding a fencing structure, and how are you going to fence, because there still are residents directly on the other side of the railroad track easement, directly to the that would be to the south. So you've got those residents to think about, and the waste management. What are you going to do with the waste? And while my brother and I own agriculture farm ground around it, I don't know about you, but I don't want someone dumping waste onto my land.
Oh, sure.
And also just thinking about historical experiences that my folks went through with the Marvin Hill pig farm that is no longer in process, but that was a really big deal. It was a really big nuisance for my family. Granted, it was a pig lot. It was different, but just thinking of historical items, possibly pitfalls you guys might want to be thinking of. We've got a lot of, seasoned Hillsboro veterans. We've got new folks that are in town on the commission, and just want to make sure you guys take into account everything so you don't misstep or miss an opportunity for something that could be good. I'm coming into this with really my opinion. I'll leave it to the side, but just wanted to make sure you guys do your due diligence. I serve on the planning commission here for the city of Gardner, and granted it's a bigger city, but we allow chickens. And as part of one of the items on the planning commission, we went through and set up rules, regulations, how you can have chicken coops in town. And it makes sense because Gardner's semi-rural, we're still Johnson County, but some of those things make sense. So perhaps as part of this exercise, whatever the commission chooses to do tonight, you might want to consider a future ordinance expanding on not only just school acceptance, but perhaps you want to look into things for other residents versus having to see conditional use permits all the time. So just forward thinking. I just have some questions on the site plan and the fencing and how it's going to be laid out. But other than that, you guys, commission, you guys do your work, and I appreciate being able to speak during the public hearing portion of the meeting. So I don't have anything else. So thanks, guys. Be nice to see you all in person, but at least you could set up the Zoom meeting. So good to see faces. Thank you.
Adriana, I have a question for you. Do you and your brother have any plans for the property sold?
Having trouble understanding you, Gary.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was just my end. My phone's about to die, so plug it in. Sorry.
Do you or your brother have any plans for the property in the future? Your property?
Still didn't catch that.
Do you have any plans for your property?
There's always plans for my property.
I would like to inject something that Adriana said about the Marvin Hill pig farm. I think allowing that was a mistake, and I think that we need to make sure that we don't go down that road. And we may be approaching a little bit of a slippery slope here with regards to that. And so I think that Adriana is correct in not wanting something like that to happen again within the city limits.
The fact
So,
that
I mean,
the fact that it was there was not well, what should I say? Was not a mistake made on somebody's part. It was been there for many years and grandfathered in. But what happened with the runoff and not controlling that, I think, is what you're talking to probably. Is that correct?
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. Understanding that, the runoff and how it's maintained. And, technically there was some consideration as to what was really grandfathered, because there was a big conversation, we'll say, 20 years ago, more than that, probably, regarding which pig actually was the true grandfather and should be allowed inside city limits. So just thinking of past experiences and how you can build on that, interesting discussion. You guys will remember. But yeah, and also how you manage that runoff. It completely different site, different plans, different things, but just if things to remember from a past experience. That's all I wanted to bring up.
Well, and we also need to be careful when we go down the runoff road because of all the farm and chemicals that are sprayed on the farm around us that run down into the pond. So if we start casting stones, be careful because it runs every which way. So
Difference in
All right.
topography too.
yeah,
We're talking in your case about grassland where there wasn't a blade of grass at all on Marvin Hill's hog farm.
Yeah, I was also watching Marvin Hill's hogs come through and run across my parents' property and tear up brush grass. I mean, there's history and as
Yeah.
to whatever's running off into the pond, that's the first I've ever heard of it. So I don't know if you have environmental studies, we can take that offline, but I had no idea about that. That's new to me.
Okay.
Animals running loose, getting off the property would be an enforcement issue. There are already rules in place to prevent that.
Good.
Other questions, comments from anybody? Would any of the commission members care to make a motion as to decision on the application?
Are we going to close the meeting and have discussion here?
Not understanding you, Gary.
Was bringing a close public hearing and have a discussion.
He wants you to close the public hearing so that we can have a discussion.
Okay, sure, that's right.
thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Okay, commission members?
You're having trouble hearing, so I don't know how. I thought with expanding agricultural and livestock use within the city limits. The problem with keeping the grass and growth under control, but that can be done with tractor and a bush hog. I'm in trouble with using high mow on, even though it's 8 acres.
8 acres is not going to hold 8 cows for very darn long without a big old stink and a whole lot of flies.
I think from my perspective, not being a commissioner, just throwing it out there, I think that you probably want to see a little bit more understanding of, well, you want to see a site plan and then kind of understand what specifically they're talking about with animals. It seemed a little bit nebulous with that. So you'd want to definitely get that nailed down as far as what the conditions would use if you wanted to go forward with it. I think Adriana's right that you probably want to look at maybe doing some, if this is something you want to think about, you may want to think about, well, we call them urban farming policies, but, some kind of policies with regards to chickens or, I've dealt with bees, different livestock animals and different zoning classifications. So there's some things that you want to maybe think about from a more policy perspective moving forward if this is something that you're interested in talking about. But I think with this specific situation, you probably ought to look at asking for a site plan and some more specifics on the animals.
And maybe Matt, this is Jesse, maybe Matt, that would help me. But at this point, my thought from listening this evening and reading the information that we got for tonight, I'm afraid we would be opening up. I think once we would allow this, we would be opening ourselves up to others then wanting conditional use permits for the same, whether it be chickens, whether it be, goats or whatever. We would have other family members, whether they're here now or if they've moved in. If we've granted it once, how are we not going to grant it, other than the fact that we can maybe lean on that it was, on the outskirts of town?
Clarify, am I not correct in saying that chickens are already permitted except roosters? Is that the way it is?
Loosely permitted. It's against city code, but it's not something that I enforce.
Okay. Somehow
But
I
I
thought
think,
that roosters were prohibited, but hens were not. But that may be a faulty memory too.
that's just my personal policy.
Okay, thank you.
But I think limiting the number would be another important consideration. I think, and 8 cows, like June was saying, on that little piece of ground there, that's going to get pretty crowded pretty quickly.
Well, and they're gonna have to fence off the house and stuff from, 8 cows. You don't want them on your front porch. So, that pulls it down to, I don't know, based on site map, maybe 6 acres, maybe less. And I think if we consider it at all, we're gonna have to limit number of this type of animal to a size. And no matter which, even a goat, you can't bring in 50 goats and then go, oh, well, they ate up all the weeds and now I have to sell them, type of thought process.
And I don't know how large of animal, like if they're talking about cows, but technically a cow, 2 cows would be even extreme. And, normally it's 1 cow to 5 to 7 acres.
Yeah. And then it'd have to regrow, or they'd have to get rid of the cow come winter. So, which, yeah, you could eat it, but I'm torn. Across the road from them to the east, has there been horses in there before while it was city property?
Yes. Grandfathered in, presumably.
Okay. I thought there were maybe.
But there have not been for the last couple of years, as if I'm correct.
Okay.
I used to take my sweet corn stalks over there and feed them to Lloyd's horses until he got rid of the horses, and that's been a couple of years, I think.
Okay. Possibly Andy might have had some horses at one point, but I might be confused there.
Okay, other comments? Is anybody ready to make a motion?
Do we want to table it until we receive and then request a site plan from the applicants? I'm not sure that would really, it might help me.
What do you and Jesse or anybody else what do you envision well, no, not we, what do you envision should be included in a site plan? Asking that more out of ignorance than anything, I guess.
Well, I think one thing would be is that we would be able to see exactly where their fence was going to be built and the range that the animals would have.
Okay.
And if I may inject, it's a conditional use permit. You can put in whatever conditions you think may be necessary. If you want to exclude cows, if you want to limit the number of whatever other animals, then you can do that. You can make it however you want. That's why it's called a conditional use permit. So if you chose to table it until you could come up with proper conditions and the request for a site plan, maybe that would be an option.
Ben, within those conditions, can there be an expiration of the conditional use if it wasn't working, or if we were having issues with unhappy residents, etc., that we could have an out?
Yeah, you could revisit it however often. If you wanted to revisit it every 3 months or 6 months or every year, you could revisit the conditional use permit and see if it's still working.
Okay.
That could be a condition of the permit.
Gary, I think you're off. You're muted, I think. There you go.
Okay. I'd like to see a site plan that shows
309, tell him not to
anticipate the animals will be able to access and what types of buildings and where the building that they're going to house the animals, if they have shelter, what types of shelters available, and where and what type of fencing we're talking about for the different animals. If we do a site.
I had a hard time understanding Gary. If someone else understood that, could you repeat what he was saying?
I believe he was asking for a site plan that would include any of the structures to house the animals, the fencing, and I think that was really the main things that you said there, Gary. Is that right?
Also, there's animals to be able to access.
Okay, where there would be access to the animals.
Yeah.
Would you care to make a motion including those things then? Presumably that would mean a continuation of this consideration of the matter to a future meeting.
Might be better for somebody else to make the motion since you're hearing me.
Probably so.
So if I would advise, as far as how you make the motion, I would advise you to table this pending additional information from the applicant, a site plan, and whatever specific information you want about the animals themselves. So that's how I would recommend you phrase that.
Parliamentary procedure would call for a motion to table. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I will move in accordance with what Matt said.
So that would be Gary would make a motion to table this and pending more information on the site plan and the animals from the applicant. Does that sound good, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'm
Is
just
there a
wondering
second?
I'm just wondering if we need to get a little more detailed on the information that we want, like type or numbers of animals, and then also include the site plan. What is anybody's thought on that?
Well, they've told us kind of what they expect for numbers of animals. I think the ball, on that question, the ball appears to be in our court now. If we think those numbers are excessive, then it's up to us to put some limitations on it, unless they want to change their numbers. They would certainly be free to do that, I guess.
Well, they didn't really put the numbers in the application.
Not
They
in the
just,
application, no.
Right.
they did, I mean, they gave them to us verbally, but it wasn't anything, I mean, it was 5 to 6 or 8 to 12. At least that's what I had written down.
Gary, can we include that more specific information in the in your motion? Does that sound like something that you would want to include in your motion? Maybe I should ask it that way.
Yeah, it would be good.
Okay, still don't have a second. Is there a second?
Do we need to set a bring? We should open it.
Can you come again on that?
We need to set a date for it to get, bring it
Date?
back up again, or just leave it open-ended until they get information in.
Well, we know when the next meeting would typically be. If they can get the information to us soon enough, we could hold to our next regular meeting date, which would be what, the last Thursday? What date would that be? Well, that's Christmas Eve, though.
Yeah, I think you would be looking at January's meeting date, which would be,
Yeah,
let me pull that real quick.
So table our
28th of January.
I guess I'm a little bit ambivalent about whether we should put a date on it at this point. Finally, if this motion were to pass, the ball would be in the applicant's court again, and we could point that we just would not be able to set a date until they furnish the information that we're asking for. And then if they get it to us in time to schedule it for the January meeting, that's fine. I would anticipate that's what would happen. But if by some chance they don't follow through, then we just don't do anything until they do what we're asking them to do.
Are they still on?
No, they
Oh, okay.
I certainly have no objection to putting a specific date in, but I'm just saying I don't know that we have to.
Could we somehow say it to the effect of, we will table it until the meeting the regular scheduled meeting following receipt of the information requested?
Yeah, we can do that.
Do that.
Then we're not putting a specific date on it. We're just saying we will address it at the next meeting after the information's received.
Set a date the next meeting, and they don't get information to us by that time, we would go ahead and address that time and could either decline their request, accept it, or table it again.
I'm not sure how parliamentary procedure works in the case of tabling something in a matter like this. No matter what our reason would be for tabling the matter, does notice have to go out again to adjoining property owners? I would presume that they're free to be with us tonight. And the ones that are not, if they don't know that we're still working with it, that's kind of their problem because they're not here tonight, although they can ask, I guess, any time about what happened. But that's my question. If we table it and consider it at a future meeting, do we have to give notice to adjoining landowners again?
No, you don't have to do that. That's not a technical requirement. Obviously, we post the agenda and it's a public meeting, so it would be something that, since you're not holding a public hearing necessarily during that time, you don't have to worry about that.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's right. The public hearing we've already had, and there wouldn't be another public at that time.
Right.
Did
Even
we
if
not
public-
hear from,
Go ahead.
Can you come again?
did we not hear from any of the other local, well, I'll say neighbors?
We did not.
I got a call from Terry Hill, which owns the property directly kind of north there, but he was just more interested in understanding what the decision was after the fact. They didn't have an opinion one way or the other.
Okay. Well, we are at a point where we have a motion on the table. I think probably for clarification purposes, we need to make sure we understand what that motion is now regarding requesting more information from the applicants. I'm not mistaken, we do not yet have a second. Is that where we're at?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any question about what the motion is at this point? Okay, then we still need a second.
Ken, this is Jesse. I'll make the second.
Thank you. Okay, one more chance for discussion.
Did anybody else get the impression that this has something to do with some argument between the two landowners?
I guess I didn't, June.
No.
Well, I was wondering when he's commented that stuff was getting left on his property and then making the comment about the neighbor's chemicals running off into his pond. If maybe they weren't having a little bit of a argument with the owners of the ag ground there.
I can maybe answer that question. I don't, Adriana's shaking her head no, which I don't think there's any issue. The issue with the trash is actually on the south side. The old railroad right of way is. People drive up there and think that it's out in the middle of nowhere, and so they just throw stuff wherever they want on that. So
Right.
we had that issue.
Right.
Forever.
And then
Tabor kids.
Yeah.
That's what they've always done. And I'll be honest, I'm just jumping in. I know you guys are done with public comments, but that's the first I've heard about any type of chemical runoff going anywhere onto that property. And let's see, my parents have had that farm since the 90s, the late 80s, and that's the first I've ever heard. So no, sorry to just jump in there, but no, there's no disagreement between our ag property and the Hallie Deers. No, the trash is Tabor kids. I'll be honest.
Yes, the comment runoff is strictly a defensive based on perhaps running off to other property. I don't think that had anything to do with anything that's gone before.
Can anybody repeat that? I didn't get it.
Not important, never mind.
Well, you're a member of the commission. What you have to say is important.
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't think there's anything going on. I think it was a defensive reaction to the comments out there and always running off.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? A little bit unsure how we ought to go about voting. I guess we're going to have to have a roll call vote since we can't see Jessie raise her hand. And I'll depend on Jen to keep track of the tally here. Let's start with June. Yes or no on the motion?
Yes.
Gary?
Yeah,
Lily?
Yeah.
And Jessie?
Yes.
Okay. The motion has passed to table the matter pending getting from the applicants the information that's been requested, basically a site plan and specific numbers of different species of animals. Is that pretty much what it boils down to, I guess? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Kind of waded through that for a while, but thank you all for your input on that. Next on the agenda would be City Administrator's Report. Anything to tell us tonight, Mr. Matt?
Nothing more than to just remind everybody that we put a mask ordinance in, and that took effect on Wednesday. So now there's a mandatory mask ordinance in the city of Hillsboro, and that matches up pretty closely with the governor's executive orders on masks and what the county's done. So the real thing with ours is that there's an enforcement mechanism. That was one of the big things with the council level that they decided to go with. I don't think they'll probably end up writing a ton of tickets. And that's not really the perspective we've adopted with it, but they felt like it was important to have some way to enforce it. So that's probably the biggest thing we've done in the last few weeks.
Okay, thank you. Wanted to say just a little bit about membership of the commission at this point. Jan sent me an email today indicating that Doug Huxman had resigned his council position or commission position effective immediately and would not be with us tonight. Did that email go to everybody else, or is this news to some of you? I'm not at the computer where she sent me that, so I didn't look to see whether it had gone to just me or everybody else, but in case you were not aware, that is the case. I did email the mayor pretty quickly after our last meeting to point out that we were running shorthanded. Eric Driggers' name has still been carried on the minutes as a member that's absent for several meetings now, and so we've been short. I guess my question would be, since he was appointed originally for a specific term, and that term is long since expired, I'm not sure that we really should be considering him as a member anymore. It does make it harder to get a quorum, and that's kind of part of what I pointed out to the mayor in my email. But in Jan's email to me today, she said that the mayor has had difficulty getting members to add to the commission. So at this point, we're down 2 members, I guess. And so I would suggest that anything that anybody that you would have to suggest as possibilities. I know we talked about it 3 or 4 meetings back probably, but feel free to communicate with the mayor about that if you have suggestions for him. It's up to him to make those appointments. The other thing that goes along with that is that in as much as Doug was recently elected vice chairman of the commission, we have a vacancy in that position now. I would propose not to do anything in that connection at tonight's meeting, but give it some thought. And next meeting, whenever that will be, I would ask Jan if she could put that item, election of a vice chair, on the agenda for whenever the next meeting is, so that we can get that taken care of. Okay, one more opportunity. Anything that's come to mind since the beginning of the meeting that we could or should talk about before we adjourn? If not, this meeting will then be adjourned. We'll see you at some future date and decide whether that's an in-person meeting or Zoom again, depending on what happens between now and then. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned.